That's when I do that. That's where I edit from, and you hear that sound. So whatever's in front of that just doesn't exist. So. So this is part 2 of the archives of the family memories. And if you remember part 1, the wonderful, amazing woman on the right, but new to the frame is what lovely, amazing, I call him Uncle Ted. She calls him husband. My mom calls him something else. Everyone calls him something. But if for everyone that doesn't know you, people watching this 20 years from now, that they hear about you but they don't know you. Tell them your full name.
I was named after my grandfather. In those days, they had a very, I guess, a sense of humor, because they used to come up with names that don't appear to be popular these days. My name is Teodulo. That was my grandfather's name. I was named after my grandfather. And my father was named after his grandfather, Serafin. I also had my brother, which was the oldest in my family, Lucero's family. His name was Serafin. So we had quite a few people that were that had names that don't appear to be popular these days. Teodulo was changed. Well, I didn't change the name myself, but the teachers had such a hard time with my name that they would shorten it, so it ended up as Ted. So that's who I became, Ted. To the other family members who didn't know that my name had changed, they still call me Teodulo. I have a big family. I belong to the Montoyas and to the Luceros. Montoya to my mother's side, and the Lucero to my father's side. I come from a long list of Luceros and Montoyas. We're from San Antonio, New Mexico, as opposed to San Antonio, Texas. This one is much older than the popular Alamo City. San Antonio, New Mexico was part of the Spanish colony that colonized New Mexico. And that was before the Tejanos, before they started colonizing Texas. So word of mouth or oral history tells me that most of my ancestors, the Luceros and the Montoyas, came from near or from Socorro County, New Mexico. And at that time, San Antonio was said to have been a Spanish fort or way station in the Camino Real, or the Royal Highway that went from Mexico City to Santa Fe.
Wow, that's a lot.
It has a rich history, and some of the oral history, because that's all we had, was passed on from father to son. Little stories here and there about that they were subjects of the King of Spain. In fact, they used to use, even to this day, they say, they use the word real for like dos reales, tres reales, talking about money wise, as it was called in the old days before they became pesos. They were reales.
Oh, I
Because
had
they
no
were
idea.
subject to the king of Spain, whoever the king was at the time. I don't know.
Is that a rebellion thing? Oh, we'll name what we want to name. It's
What?
gonna be pesos now. You can't tell us what to. Is it? Was something like that, or was it a natural?
Yes, they're pesos now, but they used to be reales at the old.
That's what I was wondering. Though, was it a rebellious
and today
thing?
in Spain, they're pesetas. But they say for 2 bits, 25 cents. They don't say 25 cents. They say dos reales. I don't know how much a real is, but they still use, some of the old people in New Mexico still use the reales. And some of them even went to pesos when it became when colonies, which was New Mexico, in other parts, Arizona, some parts of Colorado. When they became part of Mexico, then the peso came in. Because I believe, according to lore that I used to hear my grandfather talk about Nueva Andalucia. I believe that's what they called New Mexico at one time, Nueva Andalucia. I've never heard it mentioned again, except my grandfather used to say that his grandfather used to talk about. So I don't know how many generations there were of the Luceros or the Montoyas to my mother's side, but I do know that that San Antonio, New Mexico, of course, was a small town even before. Some say even before Albuquerque, but after Santa Fe, and they established a mission there and some sort of I guess a fort of some sort to protect them against the Indians that were prevalent at the time there.
Mm-hmm.
And my little town's claim to fame was the birthplace of Conrad Hilton. He was born there in San Antonio. And because his father and mother came from somewhere in the, say, Ohio somewhere, and they had a store supplying the mines that were nearby. There were some mines to both east and west of San Antonio. They'd supply the miners with their supplies, of course. They went to pick shovels and later food, and then later they made a boarding house which became a hotel, said to have been the first Hilton hotel made.
I've heard
right
of that.
there.
I was going to ask you about that. Someone told me Paris Hilton took our money.
Well, my grandfather was very wealthy at the time. In those days, had cattle and sheep, and one part of the county had sheep, and the other had cattle, from what I understand. And he was pretty wealthy, and he liked to gamble. And he would gamble with some of the rich people there in San Antonio. And Conrad Hilton was one of them. And one time, he was behind on his gambling debts, and he had to put up his land or his cattle as collateral, and lost it.
Oh.
But he never told my grandmother. In those days, the women folk just took care of the household. The men took care of the finances and stuff like that. Unfortunately, my grandfather had a stroke, and for many years he couldn't speak. So he never told anybody or anybody of any significance about the land that he had gambled, or he asked. I guess it was a sort of like a loan, and the Hiltons didn't say anything either to anybody until he was dead. When he was dead, they went out there and claimed the land, and they had the promissory notes. My grandmother took him to court, and they went to the highest court in the land, but she lost the case, and Hilton became owner of my grandfather's asset. And it was a big family, about 9 or 10 in the family. Some of the menfolk would have to go work for their first time. They weren't the working type in those days. So they spread out, some to Albuquerque, some remained there. Meanwhile, my grandfather, during the time that my grandfather Teodoro was, he was said to have been, by some people that I heard mention, he was said to have been the last cowboy, because he was a foreman for my grandfather Montoya. And his son, Serafin, my father, was his firstborn. He had the audacity to start courting my mother, Montoya,
Oh, he has
being
to
the
die.
son of a foreman.
You must die.
But later on, when they became poor, when the Montoyas became poor, it was my father who had a simple job at one of the stores in San Antonio, who bailed him out. My grandmother had to go live with him and my mother. My mother was one of the youngest of her family. My father worked for Alaire McIntyre, and that was a general store, which was after the Hiltons left. It was they bought the general store from Hilton, and that's where my father was working. He used to deliver food and supplies to the mines and to other people around the area. And Alaire McIntyre said, it's the service that we have here is too slow. I'm going to get you one of them new cars that are coming out. And he said, well, who's going to drive it? Said my father, well, you. He said, I don't know how to drive those things.
What kind of car was it at the time?
Just a car. They never heard of
Was
cars. They didn't have it. It was he was 18 years old. And New Mexico, or that part of the rural part of New Mexico, was very backward, as it probably still is, I don't know, for modern conveniences. But they went and ordered a car, and he had to learn to drive it. But see, the Model A's came with instructions in those days, how to drive it. So he learned to drive it, and he was the only one in San Antonio who had a car. It wasn't his, of course, but he used to use it. It was a little. He used to deliver groceries and deliver stuff to the mines. He was very proud to be the only driver in town.
If I get all the ladies, then
So my father was very smart. Very. He didn't have much education, but he went to the 6th grade, and the 6th grade was considered pretty good in those times, because he was one of the few that could read and write, and he'd get good jobs whenever they wanted somebody educated like him. I guess in those days there weren't very many who had education, but 6th grade was good enough. He could read, write, and add and subtract and all of that. So the Depression came, and he had to. There weren't any jobs anymore. The stores were losing money, and they were declaring bankruptcy all over the place. And so eventually we had to get out of San Antonio, and we went to Mesilla, where he got a job for the government at the target range. They call it the Doniana target range. They set up targets for the artillery to bomb the targets. That was during the Second World War. Eventually, that ended, and we moved to El Paso. Yeah, it was around 1944.
wow.
43, 44 that we came to El Paso.
And how was that travel?
The traveling, well, the question is what was the...
What was the travel like? Yeah, I mean, you're asking someone who just rented a car that has a Bluetooth. It goes 100 miles per hour. What was the traveling to El Paso like? The whole move, the road, the environment.
The traveling, I don't understand your question.
Like the travel, when you got here, how was the road here?
Oh, the
Like
road?
like we could jump in a car and we go 100 miles per hour. We get there in 6 hours. Like my question is, what was
Well,
it like?
It would take about an hour to come from Las Cruces to El Paso, more or less. Yeah, about an hour. Because instead of saying it's 45 miles to El Paso, they'd say it's about an hour drive to El Paso. And that's how they'd tell distance by how long it took to get here. So they'd say, I remember them saying, it's an hour to go to El Paso. And then we did come to El Paso, and by that time we had a Model A truck. It was an old truck then, but my father got so used to Model A's, I guess he fell in love with them. But he had that Model A truck, little truck, and that's the one we used to move our furniture. It was back and forth trips. But eventually we moved here. We didn't have very much furniture to begin with, but he started working at El Paso City Lines as a mechanic. And he took care of us during that time. Meanwhile, my brother, Serafin, which was your grandfather, he didn't like moving to El Paso or Texas. He didn't like the idea.
Where did he?
And he stayed there in San Antonio. He would come back and forth, but he didn't want to move to El Paso. So he stayed with his brothers, with his cousins over there, and finally, I guess he decided to live with us. And I was very anxious because he was my hero. And he finally went into the army after he got married. In the beginning, he was had a spot in his lung, and he didn't pass the examination for the army. That was during the Second World War. He cried because he wanted to go with all his friends, his cousins, the same age and everything. They were all going. They were all in the Army, Navy, Marines.
Was this after
And
D-Day or pre?
That was during the Second World War, when he wanted to go in, but they wouldn't take him, so he became what they call a 4F. That was the classification that he was not eligible for the army. So he had different jobs here and there, and when he got married, the Korean War started, and he said, "Well, they won't take me, so I don't have to worry about going in." He didn't want to go in the army anyway, and not there any. He had already gotten through that, and he said, "Well, I'm 4F," but he had to report to the recruiting station, and he passed.
Oh, wow.
Now he's married, and he doesn't want to go,
And he passes.
so he's in the army. They took him to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where he spent all of his time there. So during the time of the Korean War, and by that time, I'm old enough to. Finally, I'm 17 years old, and I had to beg my parents to let me go into the service. And I'm blind in my right eye due to an accident I had when I was 12 years old. I knew I wasn't going to pass, but I said I want out of El Paso. I wanted something exciting. I wanted out because at that time there was a lot of gang, pachucos and stuff like that, and I wanted out. I couldn't handle it anymore. My cousin in San Diego said, he told my mother, I'll take him over there, and I'll put him in school and give him some education. He has potential. I said, yeah, okay. I said, no, my parents said, we don't want you with that responsibility and all that.
He's our son.
I told him I'm going. I'm either going to the service, or I'm going over there to San Diego. But I gotta go. I knew I wouldn't pass the examination, so I went and took the examination, and I passed. Even blind in my right eye, I still passed.
You cheated with your left eye.
So I went into the middle of the Korean War. I didn't go to Korea, but I spent 4 years in the service at that time, and my brother was out of the army, and he started making a life for himself and his wife, Fina. He had a job at the laundry in Fort Bliss, where my sister also had a job there, and some other friends that they had. They all got a job at the laundry at Fort Bliss. It didn't pay very much, but it was a job. And then finally I came out of the service, and there was an opening in White Sands for guard duty. And I told my brother, I says, I passed the exam for the post office. I said, but there's an exam for guard duty at White Sands. And so we went over there, where he took the exam and passed it, and became a guard at White Sands.
That must have been beautiful. I've never been there. I hear it's something special.
Yeah, well, he had to commute I guess it's called commute. There was a bus that, it's still, the bus terminal, I guess it's a terminal, but that's where the bus, parks. And it's in, North Piedras here, still there. And, he'd go over to, where was it, Diana. No, it was, well, anyway, it was northeast El Paso, where they'd leave the car there and get on the bus, and the bus would take them to work. I understand that they start getting paid as soon as they get on the bus. That was part of the pay. They'd get to work, and over there they would conduct their guard duties. It didn't pay much, and his brother-in-laws, Fina's brothers, they were all in Los Angeles, and they talked him into going to Los Angeles. What are you doing there and just existing, because you don't get paid very much?
No, Los Angeles has always been a hard place to live.
The thing is that El Paso, to this point, doesn't pay very much. The wages are fairly low. So he went to Los Angeles, where they got him a job at a factory. But in one of the places where he worked, he got injured. He injured his hand.
Oh man.
So he got compensation and everything. Not money wise. Yeah, well, not very much. But he wasn't able to work in the same job, and he got disappointed with Los Angeles after a while. So he got his family and came back to El Paso. One day, he was looking for work, but he didn't feel very well. And people thought he was just being lazy, but he wasn't. He just wasn't feeling well. And he says, well, I don't have a job. I can't go to a doctor. I don't have money to pay. I said, if you go to the Veterans Administration, you'll be able to get some help from them. And I understand that you won't have to pay. He says, well, we'll try. We went to the Veterans. He had a preliminary examination. There was a doctor there. He says, no. He says, I don't like the way your heart sounds. I'm gonna recommend that you go to a hospital, and we have to do some tests because there's something wrong with your heart. He says. So he went to the hospital. About 2 weeks, he was getting weaker and weaker. About 2 weeks later, we went to visit him, and the doctor was coming out of his room, and he says, you know, are you his brother? Yeah. Is his wife here? Yeah, that's his wife. He says, well, he says, his heart has stopped twice already. And we did our best, but I'm afraid that he didn't make it. So he died as we went to visit. He just a few minutes. We missed him by a few minutes. So we had to come back and tell all the kids that his father was gone. That was very sad. One of the saddest time in my life, where I had to tell the kids that his father was gone. They were all crying. So that was the end of your grandfather.
And my grandmother doesn't Let's talk.
Your grandmother took the reins on herself. She had never worked in her life, other than housework. But she managed to be brave about it and started working and took care of her kids.
There's a lot of kids.
Amazing woman. Amazing. From being a person that had never had a job in her life to
It's like
being
12
the
kids.
head of the household and the matriarch of her family. She deserved a lot of credit.
She did amazing things.
So, what else do we have?
That's yeah, my grandmother, I asked her, do you have a question? And she actually said, I don't know right now. Because I think it was emotional for her to think about who her husband was, and maybe she kind of, I don't know, like, she had questions, but maybe she didn't want to like ask. So is there
Tina has never been one to talk about anything. She's more of an action person than a talker. She never talks about it, hardly anything.
So I'm gonna
You
try.
have to ask her the question, point blank, and she'll give you the quick answer.
So I'm gonna
She
try to
wouldn't-
ask for her.
She won't elaborate.
Perhaps there's something, because I'm curious. So I never met him, my grandfather, but what was his number one talent? Could he sing like you, or was he?
He was okay. Very mischievous when he was a kid. In fact, when I was some of my memories go back pretty far. I was 4 or 5 years old, and he had a skateboard that he made out of a orange box or something. Put skates underneath, and we'd go down. The only pavement that we had was the highway there in San Antonio, which was the main street. Actually, is a highway. At that time, it was the only highway. Now we have the freeway, but he had me riding on that skateboard, or it was a box with skates, and it fell apart, and he was going real fast. The thing fell apart, and there we both were splaying down on the pavement, and my mother saw us, and she comes out and curses him out and everything. What are you doing? You're gonna kill the baby? No. But anyway, he was always doing something, and it always had to do with me. In Mesilla, he got a bicycle for Christmas, for birthday, I don't remember. And there was the park in the middle of Mesilla. I think it still is there. I haven't been there lately. And there were mulberry trees, and those mulberry trees would shed fruit on the sidewalk. And it had rained, so it was all gooey and mushy with mulberry. And he's riding the bicycle, and he's riding me on it. I mean, double riding. And he made a turn, and he slid. And here we both go. Blam, right into the sidewalk. I had mulberry all over my face, my arm, and everything. He had to take me home. What in the world, my mother? You trying to kill my baby?
Did she tear her hair out before she was 30?
So, anyway, he was very. He loved baseball.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he was good at everything. He was an athlete. He was good at baseball, basketball, of course, no football, basketball and baseball were his loves. And even at the age of 12, he played the trumpet. He started at school, in the band in school, and he loved the trumpet. And it was cornet and then went to trumpet. The only difference between a cornet and a trumpet is the size, I guess. Anyway, he got into a band, and like his father, my father before him, my father was also in a band where he played the trumpet, drums, and violin. My father. My brother, Serafin, played the trumpet with a small band there. Then he went to another band, he worked with different bands, dancing bands. And here in El Paso, he played with, it was a pretty popular band here in El Paso. I can't remember the name of it. It was a full orchestra band. And when he learned about the spots in his lung, he blamed it on the trumpet. So he gave the trumpet up. He says, "No, I'm not going to play anymore because it costs my lungs to get a spot." But excuse me, it wasn't the trumpet that caused his bad health. Later we learned from my mother that he had, as a baby, he had
Some kind of fever.
some kind of fever. It was something that used to go on in those days. They take care of it now very easily. But he had some kind of I can't remember, it's something fever, and that affects the heart. Well, what happened was that it affected the valve in his heart.
Mm.
And that's what caused his death. When the doctor told me about his heart, he said it was his valves. I said, "Well, these valves are bad." He says, "They're destroyed." He says, "I'm surprised that he lived this long." He says, "Why didn't you come to the doctor before?" You know, there are things like now they're starting to have artificial valves in the heart. They're experimenting with those things now, but this would be a good time to have experimented with. But the way he was then, he says it was the valves were destroyed due to something that he had as an infant. So he always had that, and I guess you only live a certain amount of years after you have a valve problem like that, like he had. So he was destined to die young. I believe he was 36 years old when he died.
Left a legacy.
He was very, very young.
That's a great legacy to have. You say 36 years old and you think about what you and him combined have created. It's hard to believe back then.
Yes.
The comprehension of saying, look what we have, our family, and look what you created, and look what we've done. It's kind of mind-boggling.
And the bad part about it is, he was very funny, a very funny person. He could make you laugh and convince you of anything. He was very vociferous, very, he could talk you into anything or talk you out of it.
Is that how you got married? Did you have to talk her into it?
Like Eddie. Something like that, like Eddie.
That's
Not very much like him. He could talk you into or talk you out of, and but he was very funny. He'd make you laugh. He was always making me laugh. I was very jealous of his ability to command that kind of a fan base. I always wanted to emulate him and be as funny as he was, but I never.
So they do
I
it
couldn't
then.
get close to that because he was that that kind of a person. You have to have it in you to be able to talk like he did, and he was an artist. He could draw very well, and a musician. He was very good at music. And his trumpet. He was teaching me to play the trumpet. I never picked it up. I went to school to learn to get into the little school band, and they didn't have any use for another trumpet, so they stuck me with a clarinet, and I didn't like it.
That's a sweet sauce. Right?
And I should have stayed with it, but I didn't like it. Anyway, I still was able to produce music with my guitar and the harmonica. And a friend of mine played the harmonica. We learned together. And we used to play in small parties. I'd play the guitar and the harmonica simultaneously. And my partner played the harmonica, so we'd make a little two-man band.
Is there a name for it?
So my brother used to enjoy hearing us. He wanted to join, but there was no trumpet to play, so and he couldn't play the other instruments. But he wanted to join us. He said, "Let me see your harmonica. Let me," and he put out a little tune here and there. But he said, "No, we can't use you. You have to be better than that."
Sounds like a fun time.
So he always wanted to play, and then here we have Eddie. He got a notion to get the guitar and start learning. He learned pretty good. He has a natural talent.
You got it from him. There's a picture I saw of Eddie and a picture I saw of my grandfather, and I couldn't tell the difference.
He's very. Well, there's not very many pictures of my brother, but yeah, in some pictures they look alike. They sure do. They
How was he in the... I gotta ask because my cousin Matthew, I love Matthew, but we joke around about love life and dating. How was my grandfather with the dating scene as a young man? Was he the playboy, or was he the hopeless, out of love guy?
No, he wasn't a playboy. In fact, they were. We never knew. There were some girlfriends, but we never even knew them. We knew that they'd say, "Well, you have a girlfriend?" "No, I don't have a girlfriend." He was always denying that he had a girlfriend, which he didn't have a steady. And then when he turned out with one, we couldn't believe it. You know, "Really, your girlfriend?" "Yeah, it's my girlfriend. I'm going to marry her." And that was Fina.
Wow.
So you might say, you could say safely that he didn't have any girlfriends that were really girlfriends. No, he didn't have any. As far as being a playboy, no, he wasn't play. He didn't have. He'd use his time for sports and to play. So he may have flirted with some, and had some, but we never knew of him having a girlfriend other than Fina. Now Fina might be able to tell you that he did have a girlfriend here and there, if he ever
She's the
confided
one.
in her
She's
about
super
her
quiet.
girlfriend.
My grandma's so quiet.
Well, she's very quiet. She won't. You'll have to pump out the information if you want it.
If I want information, I have to go ask other people about her. Like I had to squeeze like a toothpaste. I'm like, what was she like? I got it. I'm almost there. What was she like? What was it? I got a date and how happy she was, but it was like a short bit. It's like a 10-second sound bites. Thanks, Grandma, but I have to go to other people to get that filled
Well,
in.
she's very, very she's very introvert. She does not speak about herself or anybody. As a matter of fact, she's very quiet. She's very
Polite. A great role model.
Very, and she's very unassuming. There isn't very much that you can say about her, because she's always been the same.
Same.
It's always been the same.
I saw a picture of her back in the day, and I went, "Oh wow," because I haven't seen many olden pictures. I saw a picture of my Aunt Stella and Albert when they were children, but that's as far as it's. Maybe a couple. It's hard to me imagine them as children. And that.
She was very good looking, a very good looking young lady when she was young. They were. She'd go along with whatever my brothers would say. They had very few arguments. And if there was an argument, it was my brother doing the arguing. And if you try to get her to say something bad about, there's always something bad to say about your spouse, or because we're not perfect, You'll never hear her say anything bad about him. And I'm sure there were arguments where he was wrong and she was right,
Stayed in the bedroom.
but she won't indulge you in that.
That's behind closed doors.
Yeah, she won't talk about it. She won't.
How was the wedding day? Were you the best man?
No, I was 15 years old. No, I wasn't. I was lucky to be invited. No, the best man was Chencho, wasn't he? Chencho was married to an aunt of yours. He was your Uncle Chencho. Have you heard mentioned?
I might have, but
From Los Angeles. He died already. He was married to Julia. Or Carmen. ¿Cuál era la esposa?
Carmen. I know Carmen. I've
Carmen.
met Carmen and
He was married to Carmen, yeah.
the California family. We saw them once every 7 years and went to Disneyland.
Yeah, well, he was the best man. And, he had a brother. Chencho had a brother. But I think, I can't remember too much about the wedding.
Nothing went wrong.
No,
No jitters.
no, it was a regular wedding like most weddings are. Married by the church, and then went to to the reception hall, danced, all of that. Yeah. And during his honeymoon is when he got a call from Uncle Sam to report.
Oh man.
No, as a matter of fact, when was that? When Fina was pregnant no,
Christina?
Huh?
Christina,
Christina.
the oldest?
I think that's when. When was Christina born? Do you know what year?
1954. 54.
54?
Yeah.
No, it was before. He was about that time that he came out of the army around there.
She's the oldest. I thought Eddie was older by like a year.
Eddie is older in 1953. In fact, it's in January, you know. I'm his godfather, and I can't remember what year he was.
You've lived a wonderful long life. It's I probably forget. I like I was telling her earlier. I don't remember something I did a month ago. And did I pay my bill before I came to Christmas vacation? I don't even know how you remember half the things.
I was in Alaska in the Air Force, and they told me that if it was a boy, if I wanted to be the godparent, the godfather, if it was a girl, it was going to be somebody else. I said, okay. I get to pick the name because that's the way it used to be.
Oh wow!
You pick the name. I had two friends, and I told them, I said I get to pick the name of if it's a boy, and then I got word that it was a boy. He was born, and he says, well, this guy says. What was his name? David. He says, name him David. And the other guy says, no, name him Eddie. So I says, well, they had a contest. I don't remember what it was. Whoever won, I'd use his name. What the heck was it? I can't remember what it was that they wagered on. But anyway, David won. So I called up and I said, okay, I picked the name, it's David. They called me back and they said, we can't use the name because there's already a David in the family that was born to one of the sisters. So I said, okay, well, the other name is Edward, I said. I called it Edward. So they didn't name him Edward, they named him Eduardo. I said, that's not the name I picked Edward, not Eduardo. He says, no, it doesn't look good. My brother said, it doesn't look good to have a gringo name and then a Mexican name, Edward Lucero. In those days, it didn't look good. Didn't seem, at least that's what he thought. Anyway, they called him Eduardo because of my friend, who both died my friends died in a crash. The aircraft went down in the mountains. They both perished. Anyway,
Sad to hear.
the Eddie's name, my friend, was Polish. He was a Pole. His name was Edward Józef Dudek.
Ma?
That was his name. Edward. That was Edward. Edward. And the other guy's name was David Dunn. They both died, and I was in the recovery mission to find their bodies. We failed to find the bodies at the time. Later on, they found them. They found the wreckage. They were unidentifiable.
So he was named after a hero.
Yes, I
That's-
guess he died for his country. I guess.
Anyone that dies for their country is a hero. I just, when you see with the foundation of America,
Hmm.
it's all those people that died for the military to make us better, and it's amazing when you think about the bravery.
Yes. Yes, I guess you could call him. You could call him a hero, even though it was not a battle. It was not war related. It was during the Korean War. We used to fly in the Bering Strait or the Bering Sea, and the pilot would say, "If you look to your right, you can see Russia." You could see some islands across the Bering Sea, and you could see, and that was Russia. And one time, I didn't see it, but they said they were looking at some planes, and they were Russian aircraft. I didn't see it. As much as I looked, I couldn't see them. They were too far away by the time I looked. But they were always playing cat and mouse in that Bering Sea, because we'd fly our planes close to their territory, and they'd fly their planes close to our territory, and it was always a cat and mouse. It was just a powder peg that we were hoping nothing would ever happen to cause an international incident or the Third World War. And it never happened, but we used to practice that it would happen, that they would attack Alaska, and we had to be ready for it. And we were always on alert, always. That happened all the time.
What was the, obviously fear, but what was the feeling in that situation during war? Could you ever sleep peacefully? Did you wake up one morning and be like, oh, I had a great night's sleep, or was it always stress? And
There was one time that I had a dream, and a lot of dreams you just forget them, but this one I can't forget. Somebody says, "Look up there," and we looked, and in my dream we saw the airplanes, and way back you could see the evidence of bombings. And I said, it finally came. There it is. We're at war. I remember it very well. That fear was always, well, with me, but I don't know how, a lot of people had that fear all the time. Others who didn't think too much about it, they wouldn't fear it. Said, no, it'll never happen. I was of the opinion that it could happen, and it was going to happen. It was very close. In my opinion, it was very close. We were very close to the Third World War and nuclear. And I think that's the reason for that. I don't know. When I was during the time that I lived in El Paso, they used to send me off to, or I'd asked to go to San Antonio for vacation during the school vacation in the summer. And they still had the outhouses over there. They didn't have indoor plumbing. So I got up in the middle of the night, which I thought it was the middle of the night. Actually, it was twilight. I went to the bathroom outside. When I was coming back, got into the room where I used to sleep with my cousin in the same bed. A big light came in through the window, as if the sun all of a sudden just shone. I said, it can't, daylight doesn't come that fast. All of a sudden the sun's coming through the window. And then it disappeared and went back to dark again. And then I heard the roar. It was a big roar and it was shaking, it shook the house. It even broke one of the windows, a little corner of the window. It was such a big roar, noise. The noise lasted about 10 seconds, and then went away. And I didn't know what. It woke everybody up. Everybody was up. All of a sudden, nobody knew what was going on. I woke up my cousin when the light came through. He was asleep. My cousin and I were always fighting, but I woke him up. I said, "Yeah, what?" He said, "Look." I said, "The light." He went back to sleep because he thought that was the sun, and I didn't bother. I wasn't smart enough to explain that it just came on all of a sudden. So I was wondering all the time, and I was 10 years old, so nobody's going to explain to a 10-year-old kid what the hell that was that we experienced. My uncles and everything, they probably knew what. Well, I couldn't hear them explain what that noise was, and I tell them about the light, but they didn't see the light, so it was just my imagination, according to them. But it was about time to come to El Paso because I wanted to celebrate my birthday, which is in August the 14th. I was here August the 11th, somewhere around then, that time. And I told my mother, I says, something happened when I was over there in San Antonio. And I told her the same thing that I just said right now. The light, the sound, the roar. Oh, she says, that was the atomic bomb. I said, what's that? He said, well, it's a bomb that they dropped in. Now they dropped it in Japan. It's a big bomb. And they were testing it in White Sands. She said, oh, it's a big bomb. Huh? What's it called again? The atomic bomb. Okay.
Whoa.
I made sure that I'd remember.
Can't forget that.
That I was witness to the first atomic bomb.
And that must have been thousands of miles away.
No.
Because the radiation can't to see it.
29 miles.
Because it's such a damaging bomb, to see it from that distance is incredible.
It was 29 miles away. There's a plain. There's some 3 or 4 small mountains, small hills, and in back of that is part of the White Sands Range, which is now called Trinity Site, the site of the first atomic explosion. People still go over there to see it. I've never been to see it, but
Well, you don't need to. You saw it. You saw the light.
saw the light.
You're like, I have more experience than you have with this thing. Go ahead and go see it, Spot. It blinded me. It's okay. I don't need to go.
Yeah, well, luckily the window was facing east in exactly the right direction, and for the light to come in from White Sands. It's a northern part of White Sands, and that sparked my interest about bombs and the war when the UFOs and stuff like that. For a long time, I'd read anything and everything that I could about flying saucers. It never. I said someday I'm gonna find out someday. Maybe if I lived to be maybe 80. I'm 80. I'll be 82, 83 in August, and I still don't know about the UFOs.
It's all U.S. military planes. Apparently.
There's talk of conspiracies where the governments, all the governments of the world, they hush it up. They won't tell the people. They don't trust us.
Sure, Trump would say something.
But
Like we have
Well,
we
we
have
have-
huge alien spaceships because you know how he is. I don't think it could possibly be true.
But here's the thing. Truman was said to have gone to Area 51 or something like that. He said one time that the government should not keep secrets from the people, except for military and national security. Okay, here's one president was. Who was it that promised when he was president, he said, "I'm going to look into it."
Was it?
Yeah.
It wasn't Kennedy, was it?
What Hillary? ¿Cómo se llama el esposo? The president.
Yeah, Clinton.
Clinton said, if I find out when I'm president, I'm going to look into it, and then I'm going to tell everybody what it is about Area 51, the UFOs, all of that. He never did.
Failed.
And one of the presidents, I don't remember which one. He says they told him that he asked the security people, and they told him, and it was Bush was the CIA director at the time, the elder Bush.
Oh, the first
Who
president.
became the president. He was at that time. He was the CIA director or something like that, and he told the president, and I don't remember which president it was. He says you have to have. It's a military secret, and of course you're being the president. You can know about secrets, but there's a need to know, and you don't have that need to know. They told him. It's like them apples, that even the president can't know who in the heck is in charge out there. But anyway,
If we find out, they'll come kill us. So
they never, none of them, a lot of them says, I'm going to ask and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. They've never said anything to us. And I'm going to die without knowing what the truth is about that.
you never know.
I don't know.
Stranger things have happened.
I have no idea. And I don't believe all those conspiracy people either. they're just as mysterious as the UFOs. As the UFOs, as the thing they're looking for. The conspiracy theorists who killed who killed Kennedy. The communists, the mafia, the Cubans, and the Russians. And they can all give you, it all depends on who you get the story from. They all have very good sounding theories.
They do. It all
But they
points to
can't all be
Oswald.
right.
I still think it's actually Oswald.
Yeah, well, that's the commission said it was him, but when it comes to the conspiracy, that third shot, what happened to the third shot? The best explanation I've heard about the third shot is that it hit the street sign. You know, there's where the pole. There's a pole, and it tells you the name of the street. And they show where if you're following the car, the first shot was taken, and then there was a space, and another shot was taken, and then the other space, the other shot, and the first and the third one hit. The second one probably hit the sign. And then later on, they changed signs, so there's no evidence of a hole in the sign. You know which signs I'm talking about? The green signs that say the street and the number.
Yes, because in Dallas,
Okay,
I've seen the video of it.
And they said that was a very good explanation.
Because it does bounce.
And you could have, they could have hit that, and there would be a hole in it if it did hit it. But since they can't get the signs, they were all replaced. Nobody paid any attention to those signs.
They're at Area 51. They're all at Area 51. Well, they didn't. Where were you when you found out he was assassinated?
When the Kennedy was killed,
Yeah, because I imagine.
everybody knows where they were when they heard the news.
Working.
We were working. We were coming off of. We were working at Farah Manufacturing. My wife and I were coming back to work to get in at noon to mark our our timing card. We were in line to mark the timing card, and somebody said, this guy said, "Your president, did you hear the news?" I said, "No, what?" Your president was killed. So what do you mean? And the reason he said your president is because he was Mexican, from Mexico.
Oh.
He says, I says, who killed him? He says, the governor of Texas. He says, that's what they said. The governor of Texas killed
wow.
the president. Oh, what the heck is... I gotta get to the bottom of this. That didn't sound right. And then they put on the intercom, they put the news. And
Wow.
and they said he is believed to be dead at this time. And we'll get back to you in a few minutes when we can confirm that. And then I says, Dad, they're talking about the president. And then they came back and he says, this is so-and-so on a certain hospital. The doctor so-and-so has declared the president dead. What the hell happened? But little by little we started getting all the information. And what happened was the involvement of the governor was that he got shot too. Not that he shot the president. And then I went over and talked to this guy and I says, well, I'm not going to repeat what I said, you so-and-so, I says, he's your president too, you silly looking. I was pretty mad because he said my president.
I don't like him. Ah.
I can't say it, but,
Yeah.
but anyway, I was pretty mad. I told him,
It's
I
funny.
told him so. I said, and if you don't like it, get the hell out of my country. He's my president in my country. Get the hell out of my country.
Were you a fan of the president?
No, I voted against him, but he's still my president.
Because the other guy, I don't hear. I've never heard, man, I really wanted the other guy so bad. Like, he was going to be the greatest thing. Was it one of those elections, like, I don't like either one, so I'm just going to choose the one?
No, I didn't have a real good reason for one or the other. The only reason that I had was my political affiliation. My party is Republican, and I voted for the Republican. So he happened to be Democrat. No big reason. No, I didn't have a real big. I was satisfied.
Okay.
Even when my members of my party don't make it, I'm still satisfied with whoever makes it.
You pray for them and you hope for
He's
the
still
best.
he's still my president. So
We're still all American, and
yeah.
we bleed red, white, and blue, so let's hang out and be nice to
It's
each other.
not like a game of football where you vote for your favorite team. Your favorite team still remains your favorite team, and the one who won, who beat your team, can go to hell, right?
Well, maybe we'll get Tony Romo for president one day.
No, I wouldn't vote for him, but I like him, but I wouldn't vote for him, not as president.
No, the
But as president of say the
this Cowboys organization.
NFL or president of the Cowboys.
Well, whoever's watching it at this time, like, I don't know, maybe 10 years down the line, someone's watching this. Tom Brady did say he wants to run for president, which is interesting because he's a very smart, extremely intelligent man. And
Well, I would have to know more about him in that sense. I would have to know more about what he thinks of the economy, of everything, other than football.
well, he's Republican. That's all I know.
I still need
Yeah,
to.
I still know.
I still need to know more about him in order to vote for him, to see if he has if he goes for, say if he's conservative, because if he's not conservative, no, I don't want him as a president. I don't want a liberal as a president, but so if he's conservative enough, I don't care if he's Democrat or Republican, as long as he's conservative, then I'll vote for him.
I'm gonna go back in time, time travel. I'm gonna just go back. I asked earlier who hit on who first, and she said that she went after you romantically, and eventually she got a yes. So, were you playing hard to get, or what was the situation of? She comes at you, and what's that like? What's that whole thing about?
You're talking about me and my wife?
Yes.
We grew up together. We lived in the same apartments when we were kids.
That's what I told him.
So we were used to seeing each other. We didn't think of each other romantically. That grew into something else as adults. In the beginning, of course, we thought like kids, and later on, we thought like adults. And we both liked sports. We'd go to basketball games to her high school, and we became fans of of the basketball team that was there, prevalent. They were very good. They were always on top, winning. And we got to, we found out we liked the same things. We go dancing, and it turned into later on into marriage. No big deal.
No, it's cool. It's a nice story.
Yeah.
Drama's never good. So that's cool.
Nothing dramatic. Other than nothing dramatic.
This is
Nothing
60 years of beautiful marriage.
60 in November. When is it?
October.
In October. We were married in 1958. It'll be 60 years.
That's amazing. In a time that we're living in, 8 out of 10 marriages end up in divorce, and they don't even see 10 years. And it's nice to see something so beautiful.
Well, and to begin with, it costs
The cost.
to get divorced.
Yeah.
We can't afford it.
Can't afford the divorce.
No.
Oh, let's stick together.
So,
We'll have good times.
yeah.
So I want to ask you this because I got her side of it. When the babies were born, they didn't let you go into the room when the babies were born like they do now. So the first time you saw your children, what was that like? Do you have to ask, is that mine? No, is that one mine? And then the emotions hidden afterwards when they go, no, that one Johnny, or that one Isaac, or Monica, or that one's yours. What's the emotion when in that moment when you finally go, oh, that one? Can I feel emotion now for that one?
There wasn't very much. The thing is, you're used to 9 months of anticipation, of knowing that you're going to be a father, or in her case, a mother, and by the time the day comes, you just welcome the time, the day that it's over with. Those 9 months are gone, and the baby is there, and I've never been much of an emotional. Oh, I do have feelings. I just don't express them. It's very difficult for me to express my feelings and emotions. So I usually don't express them. So there's really nothing dramatic that I can say about the birth of my.
Just felt a lot of love and seeing, oh, that's my child.
You mean, do I question?
Your first child,
my
that has to be something. Was it terrifying being a parent for the first time? Like, Isaac doesn't come with instructions.
Mm-hmm.
So what's in your head looking at this baby? Is it, okay, what now? Are you going to keep me up all night? What happens next? I've never been a father. Or is it just calm?
I don't remember anything dramatic about that time. I don't remember thinking that it was the end of the world or the beginning of it. No, I don't have very much to contribute to your question.
I was just wondering, because everyone has a different.
Yeah, there are some that
Some people just like go nuts and go, "Oh, I pissed my pants. It was terrifying." Being a parent, oh my god. And some just go, "No, it's cool. Give me my baby. I'm going home."
If the birth had come all of a sudden out of nowhere, then I would probably have that reaction. But having 9 months of thinking about it, when you think those thoughts is the first time that you hear that she's pregnant.
Huh.
Then it's when you say, "Oh, but what happened here?" Or, the different questions that a father might have. Is it mine?
Is it the milkman's?
What am I going to do? How am I going to take care of a kid?
I can take care of myself.
Exactly. That's when you think about those things. By the time the birth comes, you've already thought about those 9 months. It doesn't come all of a sudden anymore. It's 9 months worth of worrying or anticipation, happiness, or whatever emotion that you have about the child that your wife's going to have of yours. So it's nothing that comes all of a sudden. It's 9 months worth, as I said.
And when you bring Isaac home, does he keep you up all night, or do you remember him being a good sleeper?
I don't remember.
Because 4 kids, and there's always kind of one that you're like, "Oh God, just stay asleep."
No, the beginning of most 90% of kids, you worry that they don't cry. Really, actually, they're very quiet and they cry very softly. Only when they're born, they have pretty strong lungs. Later on, in the beginning, they cry very little, very softly, and then they start getting their strength. Then it's when you start saying, "Oh my God, I couldn't sleep last night from all the crying and all that," and then worrying about if that crying, are they sick or is it normal for them to cry like that? Those are the things that worry you as a parent, that you don't know if they're crying because they're sick or just for the heck of it.
Because you had four great children.
4 children.
And I was asking about the dating stuff. No, she had a different way of looking at it. But I was going to talk about Lupe, because Ernie, God bless him, when he came along, or when any other man came along, as a father, what was that like, meeting them for the first time? Did you ever dislike one of her guys? Or were you just as cool as she was, and there's just no drama here where you're just like, they just don't mistreat her?
No, little by little, it all depends on how you're introduced to the idea of the boyfriend. It starts coming out little by little. I'm going out, I'm going to do this. And then, well, what's his name? His name's such and such. And little by little you grow to the idea, and you grow respectful of her choice. Later on you meet the person, and because you are susceptible to liking him, you like him. But if you're of the idea that nobody's good enough for my daughter, then it's not going to be. You're not going to be a very good host. There's going to be problems. But if you're of the idea that sooner or later your little daughter is going to be having a boyfriend and stuff like that. You have to be. It all depends on your mindset, how you look at it. Now, some men, they say, "Well, I know how I was before I got married. I know how I was with girls. So I want you to be very careful because you're gonna run into people like I was." You know that's what they're showing. Actually, fear of what they used to do. And I don't have any such a fear because I never. To me, it was. I never.
You knew your girls were good.
Yeah, well, I never disrespected women.
Well, your girls apparently were just blessings. Like, you had really well-rounded girls with a little bit of a wild side, but apparently well-rounded. Apparently Monica was the more of the wild one.
Oh yeah, that one I did have some problems with. Yes, with that one I did have problems, but I can't remember what the problem was.
It's probably 1,000.
I can't remember what the main problem was. But there was problems with that marriage. But I knew it had to be resolved, and because of my cooperation, it got resolved. So things a lot of times appear to be worse than they are. And the more you think about it negatively, the worse they get.
You're a positive person by nature.
You have to think positive about things. Little by little, you accept the reality of what's going on. And by thinking positive, it helps you understand or listen. It helps you listen to the other side of any quarrel or misunderstanding. There are always two sides, maybe three or more. You must be willing to listen to the other side. At least listen, not necessarily you must be willing to accept, but you must be willing to listen and examine so that you can make a proper choice, a proper evaluation.
It's a lot of good wisdom. It's a difference that I hear from men now than I hear from a maturity level. Like, you're talking, there seems to be where men were men. And now men are taking pictures of their food on some weird apps on their phone and complaining when nothing actually happens.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking the way everyone, I feel, should be talking or should think. And it blows my mind of how does that, when you see a man now act like a little baby and you know who you are and how you're brought up. I know you're very polite and nice about it, but does it drive you a little bit insane that maybe America has fallen apart somewhere along the way?
Well, the way I look at that is that this famous statesman who said today's children don't respect their elders anymore. They go their own way. They don't respect their elders. They think they know everything, and we don't know what's going to become of this world because of that. He's quoting this. At the bottom it's signed Julius Caesar. So, we've always thought of things like that. Ever since we've been a civilization, if you can call it that, we've always thought that respect of the parents died off with us. We're no longer, the new children don't do that anymore. They don't have the respects that we used to have. We always think that, and we will always think that. If we've been thinking of that since the beginning of the Gregorian calendar, 2018 years ago, when Julius Caesar was alive, we'll always be thinking the same thing. And we always think the worst, and it doesn't happen that way. There was another quote with Lincoln said almost the same thing.
Let's repeat history.
So and now any of us can say the same thing. The kids don't respect their elders, etc., etc. It'll always be like that. People thinking, and the ones that are thinking are the parents or the older people, are the ones that think that.
So that hasn't changed much.
The thing is, do we remember our own youth? Did we actually respect everything, every part of it, or did we just obey and then go out there and say, I don't know, my father's and my mother, they're old-fashioned. They want to do this, but what the heck? I tell them yes to keep from arguing.
See, that doesn't change then, but the thing that has changed is the civil rights movement. And you were in the smack dab middle of it, and I just go to history, get obsessed with it, and listen to a bunch of history books. But being in El Paso during, the Michael Douglas set the separation but equal, worst they've ever passed in Supreme Court history. What was it like in El Paso at that time? Could you feel it, or was it more in the South?
I never felt any personal discrimination. No, I've never felt it. The only exposure I had to racial discrimination was when I was in the Air Force and stationed in Florida, where I saw some of the people in the South and heard about it and everything, because over there maybe to this day they still have their personal preferences or the discrimination, even though the laws don't allow it. And as far as the laws are concerned, they obey the laws. But nobody's going to stop me or anybody or whoever. I mean, this is the consensus from liking or not liking a person or their race or their ethnicity, or that's what they say. That's a freedom of thought, they say. Or I guess that's what it is. You can think whatever you want, and there's no law against that. Okay? They say, okay, no law is going to force me to like a stranger, to like a person that I'm afraid of. I happen to be, I'm talking about somebody else saying that, not my personal. They say, I happen to be afraid of blacks because they have knives, they have guns, they have this, they're clannish, they get together in a mob, they hurt people. I don't like them. But I own a store and I have to serve them. The law says, and I will. I'll respect the law. I serve them. I have a restaurant. I serve them. I drive a bus, they don't have to sit in the back. But I still don't like it. Yeah. In other words, they reserve the right to dislike. But they don't have the right to discriminate on something that is given to freely to someone else. Whereas you're entitled and you have a right to do this by law.
But a bill's not.
And you say, okay, I'll allow that. I am for that. But if it's something, if somebody tells me I'm going to have to like you, I don't have to like you. What I have to do is obey the law and let you do it, allow you to do it. But I don't have to like it. I don't have to love you. I don't have, that's the kind of thinking that still goes on with some of the older people. The newer people
Mijo, come here.
are exposed to are exposed in school to all kinds in the school because the law says you must do that. And they're growing up with less and less prejudice. And that's the way it should be.
It's always something that sticks with me because as a history buff, oh my God, do I love history.
Mm-hmm.
But unless you're living in it and have lived in it, you have different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's always just been so fascinating. Because El Paso may not be as affected as someone, say, in Georgia. That'd be a whole different.
No.
That'd be a whole different can of beans.
And there weren't that many blacks in El Paso. Now Mexicans, there are.
And I think they've been safe for a while. And this President Polk was like, "Oh, they went against us. We want California. Show me the spot. Where's the spot? War. We don't need a spot. We'll just go to war." President Polk, good old guy. But what I was going to ask about is, I heard El Paso had camps during one of the wars. The Japanese.
A camp,
They had camps here for them.
a prisoner of war camp. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, is that true, or was someone?
No, it's true. The Coliseum was turned into a prisoner of war camp. The Coliseum that we have. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
But, okay. They had machine guns on the corners. They had spotlights and everything. And they had Italian prisoners. They were prisoners. And in case you weren't aware of, we were fighting the Italians too in the Second
Wow.
World War.
I did not know that. I gotta go read some more history. I thought it was just the
I thought I'd
Germans.
throw that in because a lot of people don't realize that the Axis was Italy, Japan, and Germany. Those were, and the Allies were us, U.S., the United Kingdom.
And whatever's left of France,
Yeah, whatever was left of France.
because they got beat up. That we had to go in there on D-Day and do some stuff.
Yeah, well, France was occupied. Italy had Mussolini. Germany had Adolf Hitler, and
Right.
and Japan had Hirohito. Or Tojo, actually, because he was the prime minister. Hirohito was the emperor.
He's the one we bombed.
And,
Right.
well, he was the emperor, but it's like the Queen of England. She's not the head of the Queen of England is not the head of the United Kingdom. It's whoever is prime minister. Well, it's the same in Japan. Tojo was the prime minister. And Hirohito was the emperor, descendant of the gods. Anyway, the Mussolini was
He's not a good guy.
what did they call him? Not a Nazi, but
It's another word for Nazi.
I forget the name that they had for him. But it's like Nazi. Anyway, he had his army. In fact, he started before Hitler did.
Really?
He started being
So it was
dictating.
it was like a bad romance, Hitler meet the other Hitler. Hey, let's be friends.
Well, he admired Mussolini. Hitler admired Mussolini. He said, "Well, that's what I want to do." He had Mussolini had the people on his side because he spoke very well and a lot, and he promised much. Of course, you can promise all you want. If you don't deliver, well, that's something else. And if you cannot afford to deliver, that's something else. Well, see, you can say you're going to do this and that, but if you cannot afford it, you can't do it, right? And if the legislature doesn't allow you to do it, well, you can't do it either, because you can only do so much. You're limited. Okay, what they fight for is limitless authority, where they're the authority, the entire authority. And absolute rule corrupts, and nothing corrupts more than absolute rule.
So, I love all your wisdom. Like, I'm hearing all these things. I'm learning so much. Like, I'm going, oh, I could change my life for the better by listening to you. And that's like a lot of smart knowledge. Just, it's a lot to take in. But in history, up till now, what's the number one change you've noticed? As far as political goes, as far as how presidents have handled things, at what time period do you think
Would be ideal or
like
not want?
what time period did politicians really change course? Because we saw true politicians that used to talk about real issues, and then all of a sudden there was like a war on horseshoes or something. Something in the middle changed. Politicians were different, and they're completely different now. And in your lifetime, which president changed the course of the way things were handled?
Well, the U.S. has, and its laws are such that it moves slowly. There isn't any sudden, but I'd say that a turning point, and I think it's what you're looking for,
Turning point.
FDR, and it wasn't him that caused it. Well, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It was a time that caused it, caused him to think differently. He was he was conservative to a point, but he was very liberal in other things. He started right in the tail end of the Depression, and tried to do something about it. He was handed a very a formidable task to perform for to get the United States out of that bind. Not only the United States, but that was his concern. It was a worldwide depression. But they say, oh, well, other countries, that's their problem. We have to handle our problem. And the way to handle our problem is this way. And his way was to get his money into the Treasury and start the workers' program.
Was that a good thing?
To some and to others.
Did it help you at all?
It helped me directly because it helped my father, of course, to get a job. And they called it was one of the many programs, he had several, was WPA, workers something program. Associated work. Anyway, I can't remember what the WPA stands for, but it meant that that he would, and the critics would say that he would create the jobs, and others would say that he supplied the labor for those jobs. See, the some of the jobs were making trails in the, say, for instance, one of the many things that that the WPA used to do was go to the national parks and make trails.
That's cool.
Safe for the hikers, and say put tables and fire places to build fires safely on the trail, and put signs up, and make it easy for a person to enjoy the outdoors.
So the start of the recreational movements.
Yes, but it was actually to give somebody a job. And they'd hire many people to go out there. Not only those that are in charge, but those were with a pick and an axe, and go out there and cut some trees, and build some tables, get rid of some rocks, make a trail, you get cement people, carpenters, and stuff
Wow,
like that.
that's so interesting. I had no idea. I just took it for granted. I just show up, and I'm like, "This is a beautiful park, guys. Let's go."
Yeah,
on
and
the
there's
trail."
a big sign there. It says, over here is such and such and such. All of those things had to be paid for. Somebody had to make them.
So there was a time when you just saw a land with trees and like, oh, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is amazing. We can walk through this park now. Look at all these things.
There's a lot of things like that. And then there's others that where you see a canal that is built, or the dike on a river to keep it from flooding. Those were made by the
The Hoover Dam must have been a
another-
big event too.
Well, that was one of the things that was done during the Depression, and it was a workforce sponsored by the government. The dikes in New Orleans, the dikes in most rivers, the Rio Grande, dams, bridges, roads, etc. He would propose a bridge be built here, and take that old one off and put this new one on. The critics would say that old one was good enough. Why spend money on it? Why spend government money on it? Put it that way. But anyway, bail out a state that was very poor because they didn't have enough population to get the revenue that they needed. Nevada only had 10 people living in it, and they make it. In Arizona, nobody lived there.
Wow. Different now.
And, build a dam for the farmers down there, and for electricity for Los Angeles, which is growing by leaps and bounds, and stuff like that. Those are the programs that FDR made, and he was criticized for some of them, and idolized for others. I'd say. Oh, and then he kept America from the Second World War. No war, he says. The only thing to fear is fear itself. You only fear fear. You don't fear all those rumors about some Hitler doing this and that and trying to dominate the world. That's a European problem. We don't have that problem. Our problem is different. We are not going to war.
Well, not till we get attacked.
Well,
Because we have to. We can't just go,
No.
oh, what'd you do? It's cool. They're not going to war.
But things don't happen the
That
way
was a
you'd
plan.
like it to happen. But his he was voted. People voted for him because he was a peacenik. He was for peace. Let him. That's their problem over there. We fought a First World War, which was called the Great War at that time. It
What did
wasn't called-
people want?
It wasn't
Everyone you
called.
talked to, what did they want? Did they want to go to war, or were they
The
just
people?
confused?
No people wants to go to war.
Well, like, was there a
Some
necessity?
businesses, they'd say good. It's good for business. But when you're talking about a young person going out there and putting his belly out there to get shot, that's my son you're talking about. Or that's my father. Or that's me.
Because we still talk about that now.
Yes, we always will.
With the jihad movement, they yelled at the president, "How come we're not spending more people?" You're like, it's not that easy. It's anywhere you go to, any terrorist group with a German flag or a jihad Muslim bandage from the Middle East, it's the same story. We don't want war, and we still have these debates.
Oh, we always will. We never agree to have the same political thoughts as another country, or agree to where the border should be, or agree to buy this from them, or buy it from so and so, or agree to allow me to sell to whoever I want. Part of the war with Japan was because we boycotted them into not. We said, well, we're not gonna. We used to be the #1 producer of oil. We're not gonna sell it to Japan anymore. Japan says, we need the oil. We're industrializing. We need the oil. Why are you doing this to us? And the answer was, because you're doing this and that to China, and Manchuria, and Indonesia, and threatening the Philippines, and threatening Bali, and even India. You want their oil over there. You want to get it by any means. You want the metals and the metals from Manchuria, and you're going after them. You're toppling their government so you can get it. That's why we're not going to sell you any more oil, and that's why we're not going to sell you any more scrap iron. We already gave you all our scrap iron over there. We don't know what you're doing with it. You're turning it into elements of war. We don't want anything to do with you anymore.
Yeah,
Japan says, well, we need it. We need all those things. Between the United States and us, we can dominate the world.
we didn't want that.
The United States says, we're already dominating.
And then
we don't-
Pearl Harbor happened.
We don't need any more. We have a lot. We produce refrigerators, automobiles, everything here. We use them ourselves, and we sell to the rest of the world.
When all this is happening, you have the family, there's kids. What is the feeling in America? Is there consistent fear? Because it seems like these decades
Well,
seem to have some kind of a bubble over their heads of, oh my God, the horrible things are happening. Are we next?
I cannot give you that answer for the Second World War, because I was not an adult at the time and I didn't think like an adult. I could only see the reaction of, during the war, of the mothers and the fathers that lost their sons in the war. It was horrible. And the fear was there. I had a lot of fear that the Germans, whatever that was,
would come in.
would come. That's why we had to turn the lights off. We had to turn the lights off and the siren would go on for practice.
Wow, I didn't know that happened.
Yes. And we had curtains, we had to shut the curtains down. We didn't want any light to show on the city, on the town. We had to practice that. Appointed, somebody was appointed as, I don't remember what they were called. Where they wore a little helmet. They had a band, a flashlight, and they would go around to see that people would comply with the situation.
Wow.
We had, for kids, we suffered because there wasn't any more bubble gum. There wasn't any sodas.
Oh, wow.
Very few sodas. Usually the bars had got the sodas first. There weren't very many superstores. There were very few. It was Safeway. If there was a superstore, it was a Safeway, and there were only about, in El Paso, I'd say about three Safeways, and a Hot Spot. Hot Spot was another store like the Safeway. And the rest were mom and pop stores in the neighborhoods.
Oh, that's nice.
And that's where most of the people bought their stuff, because they could buy it at paying in payments at the end of the month or at the end of the week. They had a little book.
It was like what, 10 cents back then? Now they're like $10.
Oh yeah, but
There's
it's
a
still,
difference in currency.
there was no advantage or disadvantage. It's the same. People would earn very little, but things cost very little. Now we earn a lot, but things cost a lot. It's still the same thing about affording or not affording. And I think in some cases, if we don't have the money, we're really bad off. But in the older days, there weren't as many programs
We
by
have
the
now.
government and the city and the state to help those that didn't have it. But on the other hand, it forced the people to do something, to work, to do something, produce something, get some kind of a job. People still had to live, and they lived.
They tried.
So, so we have trade-offs, see?
And at any time, was there fear of any of your children being drafted into a war?
Oh yeah. Well, not me.
Was Vietnam time, how old was Johnny
Being born.
during the Vietnam time?
He would have been born then.
But was there
No, he wasn't even born then. He was born right after Vietnam. After we brought our men home.
so was there a wartime that you feared Johnny might be drafted given that the time periods?
No, I didn't have to worry about that because we didn't have any more declare wars after that.
We had those little ones with Saddam, you know.
The Desert Storm and all those were not declared war per se, where they have to draft and go out there. But it's mostly volunteer armies, see?
Because I thought about that. On 9/11, well, that's a good question. Where were you on 9/11 when you found out? Because that was pretty...
We were we went to, she had she was at the clinic getting some kind of a test done. And they had the TV, and we kept seeing the building, one building on fire. And then we were looking at it, and you could see the other building too. And then another plane comes and hits that building. and they're talking. These people are talking. Did you see that? Another plane hit the other building. Wow.
It's confusing, right? You're like, what's happening right now?
We saw it live.
I was
on
at school
TV.
watching the same thing. The emotions were so high. I was like, what's happening?
Yeah, well, they see. I said it had to be when it was they were showing the fire and everything on that floor. I said, well, they don't know what happened yet. You know. I said, well, it has to be a bomb. What else could it be? Some terrorist took a bomb up there and exploded it. What else could it be? It's a bomb.
Because everyone thought it's terrorism, but who? Who's doing it?
But I thought it's very simple. It's a bomb. Somebody planted a bomb in the building and it exploded. But who did it? And then, as we're thinking that, and the fire is going on in that building, you can see a plane plainly coming in behind the building, and then another fire, and the people were still talking. These people are commenting on this building. They're talking about it, and but they're not saying the plane crashed, nothing like that. He says, "Did you see that?" He said, "There's another one. That's an airplane that crashed into it," and but that's where we were, and that's what we saw.
What killed me was they didn't let us leave, and you're sitting there at the clinic, but to see those people jump the building, they know they couldn't get past the fire, and they were jumping, they were holding hands and jumping out the window. I just was crying so hard. I was like, dude,
Well,
killing yourself's not going to help you.
A lot of people didn't see that.
It's like
They weren't. Some stations weren't showing that. They weren't showing the people coming down.
No.
They refused to show it. Other stations did show it.
I guess I got the one.
You got the one that showed it. I
'Cause I
never
was
saw it until recently.
And it's
Saw
hard
the
to
people
watch.
jumping down.
Very hard to watch. Because I was like, those people just jumped. Don't they know they can live? And they told, go home. Go home and lock your doors. We're going to shut down. We don't know what's going on. And I remember Bush was reading a book to somebody and they said, stall.
It was in
We
the
don't know what's happening.
primary in kindergarten. There were kids there, and they came over and they whispered in his ear, and that's when he learned.
And when this is happening, 2001, who in the family are you most scared of? Or are you scared for all of them? Because you're a patriarch. You have so many children and kids to watch over, and you care for everybody. 9/11 is happening. The Washington White House, a plane goes down trying to crash into that. Do you just want to run home and hug your children? What's going on? What's going on there in your head? I can't even imagine.
No, we were so full of different tragedies. If you recall, 200 Marines lost their lives in the Middle East, where they were bombed. There were other tragedies that led to this. It was one of many. This was a big one, but it was one of many. It was not the end of the world or doomsday, nothing like that. To me, you're asking me how I thought. No, I didn't think it was. I thought it was very tragic, but not something that we couldn't get over with. We will survive this. We've survived other things.
I think the
And
common
that's my thought at the time.
Bush, when he got the microphone, and he goes, "They will hear us."
Okay,
that was so
somebody said,
comforting.
"I can't hear you." He says, "I can hear you," and everybody is going to hear you, or hear us from here on, because we're going to do something
And
about
those
it.
people have not disappeared. We're still We're still fighting them right now. They're still horrible.
One thing led to another, and another thing led to another, and so on and so forth. In other words, some say we caused more of it to happen than what it would have.
So it's amazing to me is you have such an amazing life and knowledge, but you saw almost everything where we just hear about it. And to say World War II, 9/11, the Korean War, Vietnam, Nixon gets nominated,
Second World War.
Deep Throat on the news as it happened, versus having all the information.
Oh, the amount of time that it takes for something to happen, for me to learn about it, or us to learn about it, that is the amazing thing. And the Vietnam War was the first war that we had almost daily occurrences, almost live TV, very close to live TV.
Did you my question to people when Vietnam is, were you no, you're not comfortable watching it, but there was two parties, one that said take the cameras out and let the men do their job, those that say we need to see this. What side did you fall on?
Keep the people informed, because that caused the. Yeah, it's very difficult to say, because because of popular opinion, we had to get out of there, thus losing the war. We didn't lose it. We chose not to fight it anymore. By the same token, people can say the British didn't lose the war against us
The building stages.
when we became the United States.
They
They
decided,
chose not to keep on fighting. It wasn't worth it.
they made a deal. They made the land deals. They said we're done. I think they knew what's best for them. They knew that this is we're not gonna win this, or this will go on for the next 20 years.
Exactly. And they say, well, we're not going. Britain said, these people are just too united. We're not gonna win it. We're not gonna win their hearts and minds. See, we can win the war. We just keep on sending people until we win it. And then it didn't. It wasn't too. They weren't too far away from doing it. We almost lost it. But they finally decided, and the people, the parliament, everybody was saying, no, it's not worth it. We're killing our own people. They're British too. They used to be. Now we're killing them, and it's not right. We're killing them because we're greedy. We want taxes. We want to tax them to death. We want to tax their tea that they drink, and they can only buy from us.
Yeah.
No, they could have
Yeah.
They could have bought tea from somewhere else and not pay the taxes.
That's what they did. They went to India.
They weren't allowed. They weren't allowed to buy from somebody else, but they were dictating everything that we did. See, I'm not saying we didn't have the right to fight them.
Well, the only reason, I think everything happens for a reason. We're here right now, and you can tell these amazing stories about your life and history because these things happened. And I think instead of complaining about it, what good came out of it? Because if that didn't happen, and it's kind of going back, parts of history would never happen if we wouldn't be here. Johnny was earlier here, and you heard him. His happiest memory was working on the car with you. And he got choked up, and that, like, oh man, that must have been a beautiful moment. It makes me feel like I was there watching it because it was so special to him. And seeing Johnny light up with love, and the time he hugged the car, it's these moments that built up to the little things. Like, America was built up so Jesus blessed you with that moment you could build a car with your son. Like, everything has a place and a time. And I think it's a wonderful, thought.
Mijo,
Yes.
do you know who this guy is?
He's my cousin Isaac. I think he's trying to avoid the camera. Yeah.
So you're looking.
Well, let's get him into it.
Yeah, we can get him into it. Because I love talking about you and the family
Mhm.
and the history of it. And
Well, let's have an intermission here, and then start with
yeah, because
that's it.
yeah, I want to end with this with you is we can continue on with you more, but I asked for this of her.
Yeah, well, you only have so much time on the camera. You're gonna
No, I have time.
Yeah.
I just it won't take this long. I asked her 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when a new generation comes in, they don't know who you are. They hear stories of Uncle Ted or whatever they want to call you. They say, we know he existed, but there's a video now. What do you want to tell the future family? What do you want from them? What's the importance that you want to carry forth for a message maybe 20 years from now in a capsule?
I don't. I'd have to think on that. I don't have any particular advice. I've never had the wisdom that I wish I had. You're looking for little pearls of wisdom, which I
Oh,
don't.
you've dropped a lot. She dropped this wonderful family's everything, and it was beautiful and
I heard that,
touching.
and I don't think I can add anything to that, to what you said. Yeah, and in other words, I'd be repeating what you said. Rather than doing that, I'd say
Let's do what she
pay
said.
heed to it.
Yeah, because I heard everything you said, and I think you said it all. Toughness, being a man, taking care of your family, doing what's needed, and raising your kids the best way possible. And I just want to thank you for being such wonderful, amazing people, and being such great Patreons to this family. This time is fleeting fast, and we hate to think of it that way. And one of my important missions was to document everything as much as possible, because I love you guys so much, and I wanted people to know who you are and to hear you and see you, because there's people I never got to see, and
Well,
and I'm glad they had the opportunity to hear your thoughts and your wisdom.
I wish I had had the same opportunity to see my grandfather. My father was very quiet. He wouldn't have contributed very much to. He was like Fina is.
Yeah.
But you get him alone without a camera, and he's a great storyteller. In those days, that was the only entertainment there was in that rural part of New Mexico anyway. I don't know about other places in the world, but I imagine it was the same way in the old days, without the media, without television, radio, in some places no newspaper either. All we had was
A radio.
no. Besides that, and before that, all there was what the stories were told from the older people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the Indians had, and what many Aboriginals have. It's just the lore, the stories that are told over the campfire. Well, that led to the same things done in a kerosene lamp, and not in a campfire, but that's what we had. We didn't have electricity when I was a kid there. It's not that there wasn't electricity and electric light, we just didn't have it. We didn't have indoor plumbing either. But so I got part of the older days in the West, even though new facilities existed then, but we didn't have them because we were poor, and because it was the Depression, the tail end of the Depression. Some things, even if you had the money, they weren't available. But stories were told about the forefathers and history of a sort, history of the area my uncles would talk about my father would talk about their uncles, my grandfather would talk about them when they were kids. When my father was little and he had a broomstick was his horse. And he'd ride his broomstick all over the place. And one time he was missing. They started looking for him and they couldn't find him. And somebody says, well, I saw him, a little kid, he was walking along the railroad. And he had a little broom as if he was riding a horse. So really? So they got on the horse and they went up the railroad, and about a mile or two, he was still going on his little horse. He was going to Hot Springs, he said. Hot Springs was now Truth or Consequences is the name of the town.
That's a good name.
They used to go over there to bathe in the mineral waters. And it would take all day to get there. But he was going to go in his horse and follow the railroad.
I can picture that, something like that. That's funny.
He was out there. And his father, my grandfather, told me that story. Okay? He was a great storyteller. Now you say storyteller, well, that's a liar, right? No, it's not. A storyteller is someone who has mastered the art of telling a story as it was, or as they think it should be, or as they think it really happened. But of course, sometimes the story gets embellished. But normally in those days, it was the only news sort or the only history that we had. So I think they were very careful to tell the truth.
Twitter was when you got a bird and you put a note on its thing and you hoped it made it. And then maybe 2 months later they went, haha, that's funny. They didn't respond. It's been 6 months.
My father, as well as your grandfather, was a great, now come to think of it, Serafin was a good storyteller too. He'd come over and tell my mother the whole movie he saw.
Huh.
He'd see a movie, and she said, "Hey, you know, I don't know if you'll ever have a chance to see this movie, because we didn't get a chance to see the movie once it was made, and you missed it." He said, "But here's what happened. It starts with this," and then he tells the entire movie. The entire movie, and make it just as interesting as going out there and seeing.
I'm sure my grandma loved that.
I'd sit there and watch the whole movie myself. The movie that he was describing. Yeah, I just thought about that.
That's great.
And my father was, I heard that he would say the story of Sinbad the Sailor.
Yes, I love that.
He gave me, there were different chapters of it. Sometimes he'd say one chapter, and then another time he'd say another chapter. He was a reader. He'd read a lot. He read a lot.
My brother Albert likes to read too.
And
You like to
and
read too.
I read his the one. In fact, he owes me a bunch of books.
Well, you'll see him on Sunday.
Yeah, he
Go in
says,
there. I demand my books. I brought a box. No, he has lots of books, and I just bought him one to read because he ran out of books to read.
Ba?
I know. I'm supposed to reciprocate, but I don't buy any. So I'm just getting some. I don't have anybody else to give me some books so I can trade them.
Well, he'll give you plenty. Just take a box or something. He'll.
I get him. Sometimes I get a big box like that from it. He says, "I've got a box for you or bag."
I just released a book on Churchill and Hamilton, which I was interested to looking at.
Hamilton. What does Churchill and Hamilton have in common?
Just history. They put 2 bio books with new information on the 2 men of history.
Oh, but
Yeah, the books. The books are out of their bio with more stuff.
They're not connected.
No.
No, okay.
They might be great books. But this has been a great talk. I love that you did this. This is great. And
Hamilton was the one that was killed in the duel, wasn't he?
he was by Burr.
Yeah, by Burr. Okay.
Hamilton.
Who was tried for his murder. Yeah, well, those were crazy days.
Yeah, I love. I'm gonna have to. I have to talk to you about history again someday. The little things,
That's,
but I'm gonna give time to Isaac. Because I think I have an hour left on this.
okay.
And tomorrow I'm gonna go buy some new memory cards, and we're gonna do some more stuff on Sunday. And soon this will all be available to see for everybody. But thank you so much.
I need to go to the bathroom. What?